My name is Ava, and I was 21 years old when everything in my life shifted. Until then, my world had been small, simple, and filled with both love and struggle. When I was 15, my father passed away. She worked 2 jobs to keep us going: early mornings at the diner, long evenings at the grocery store. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night to find her sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread out in front of her head in her hands, whispering prayers she didn't think I could hear. From that point on, I knew childhood had ended for me. I started working part-time after school at a small coffee shop in town, earning just enough to pay for groceries or help with the electric bill when things were tight. And then there was Liam, my little brother, 6 years younger than me. At that age, he didn't understand the heaviness that hung over our family. He had this laugh that could make even the hardest day easier. And sometimes I felt like my entire purpose in life was to make sure that laugh never disappeared. I wanted him to hold on to that innocence as long as possible, even if it meant sacrificing parts of myself to shield him from reality. For a while, we found a rhythm in the middle of all the struggle. I found my mother on the couch, her hands shaking as she held a letter. Tears streamed silently down her face, and her shoulders trembled as though the weight of the world had finally broken her. I sat beside her, my heart racing, and she handed me the letter. It was from the bank. We had 30 days. 30 days before the one safe place we had left was ripped away. I felt the air leave my lungs. But I understood. My chest hurt with every breath, my thoughts spinning out of control. My father was gone, my mother was breaking, and I felt like I was failing both of them. It was then, in the middle of that hopelessness, that someone unexpected stepped into my life. I had seen him many times before at the coffee shop where I worked. He was impossible to ignore. He always wore suits, perfectly pressed and tailored, with expensive watches and shoes that gleamed. He was handsome in a way that was intimidating, with dark hair neatly styled and eyes that seemed to see everything without giving anything away. He wasn't rude, but he wasn't warm either. He was distant, serious, and always in control. He never lingered, never tried to make small talk. He would take his coffee, nod politely, and leave, disappearing into his world of wealth and power, a world I could only imagine. I knew he came from a wealthy family. People in town whispered that his family owned hotels in the city, luxurious ones where ordinary people like me would never be able to stay. So when he came to me that day, standing at the counter long after the other customers had left, and looked at me with those calm, unreadable eyes, I didn't expect anything more than his usual order. But instead, his words left me stunned. "Ava," he said, his voice deep and steady, "I need a wife. Just for 1 year." At first, I thought I had misheard. My laugh came out awkward and nervous. "What?" His expression remained calm, serious. "My grandfather is dying. His last wish is to see me married. If I do it, I inherit everything. If I don't, I lose it all." None of it made sense. "I will pay you enough to save your house." At first, I thought I had misheard. I felt my heart pound louder in my chest. "Enough to change your life." I stared at him, unable to comprehend what he was really asking. A fake marriage? It sounded insane, like something pulled out of a dramatic story or one of those cheesy romance movies. Yet when I looked into his eyes, I realized he wasn't joking. Ethan didn't strike me as the kind of man who wasted time on jokes. Yes. What would people say? How could I live a lie like that? But then my thoughts returned to my mother, to Liam, to that terrible letter from the bank, to the house that had been filled with our memories and laughter, now at risk of being taken away. Suddenly, the decision didn't feel like much of a decision at all. "Okay," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Good," he said simply. I nodded, but inside, I was trembling. City Hall. Nothing about this felt real, and yet it was happening. The next days passed in a blur. One moment I was a barista with a looming deadline to save my home, and the next, I was standing at City Hall beside Ethan. There was no dress, no flowers, no guests. Just the act. "This is our apartment," he said. "We'll live there. At least when my family visits. It has to look believable. No touching, no emotions, just the act. Just a paper, a ring, and the agreement we both made to carry this lie together." That first night in the apartment felt surreal. The place was enormous, gleaming with polished marble floors and endless windows overlooking the city skyline. It was a world away from the small, cozy house I had grown up in. I stayed in the guest room, lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. The ring on my finger felt heavy, a reminder of the lie I had agreed to live. I told myself over and over that it was just for 1 year. Just a deal. Just a way to save my family. But deep down, I already knew that once you step into a life like this, nothing can ever truly stay pretend. Pretending in front of his family while being distant in private. The first small cracks in Ethan's walls, small kindnesses, conversations, laughter. At first, the arrangement with Ethan felt like stepping into a play where the lines had already been written, and I was merely an actress repeating them. He stayed in his bedroom, I stayed in the guest room, and in the shared spaces, the kitchen, the living room, the dining area, we moved around each other like strangers. We weren't rude. He was always polite, always respectful, but distant. He reminded me constantly, even without words, that this was just an act. A business transaction. Nothing more. The pivotal moments. His grandfather's birthday, Ethan opening up about his past, and the first real kiss. He held my hand with practiced ease, smiled at me in a way that looked real enough to fool anyone, and once, even pressed a quick kiss to my lips in front of his relatives. It was strange living two lives with the same person, strangers in private, partners in public. Days turned into weeks, and I began to notice things I hadn't at first. Ethan, for all his cold exterior, was attentive in ways that surprised me. When I caught a fever one evening, he appeared at my door with a tray, tea, medicine, and a glass of water. Another time, when I talked absent-mindedly about my dream of someday studying design, he didn't dismiss it or change the subject. He listened. His sharp eyes softened just a fraction, as though he saw me not as a hired actress in his charade, but as a person with hopes and fears. It was those small things that started to undo me. One evening, after a particularly long day, I told a silly story from my childhood that made me laugh at myself, and to my shock, Ethan laughed too. The sound startled me, warm, genuine, so different from the carefully controlled man I thought I knew. He didn't make a show of it, didn't speak much, just set it down beside me with a quiet, "Take these." In that moment, I caught a glimpse of something hidden beneath the surface, a man who wasn't carved from stone but was flesh and blood, human, capable of joy. When his family visited, when we attended events together, or when people we knew were watching, we transformed into the perfect couple. It was survival. But the gesture stayed with me.